The girl who tried to drown me when I was a little kid. I'm not sure how old I was, but I was really small, maybe around 6 years old. I was with a bunch of people from my church having a barbecue at a river. All the kids were swimming in the water. I didn't know how to swim yet, so I was just staying waist deep in the shallow part. At some point, this girl came up to me and was playing with me. We were splashing each other and stuff like that. The weird thing was, she was probably 13 years old or so, and I didn't know who she was. Even though I knew everyone else there, apparently no one was paying attention to us. She started pushing me deeper and deeper to where I couldn't touch, but she just kept laughing the whole time. My head kept going underwater. I tried grabbing onto her arms and she would push me, but she easily knocked my grip loose. The slight current slowly pulled me away from my friends and family while I struggled to tread water. I was panicking, but she wouldn't stop pushing me and laughing. I could not possibly have looked like I was having fun. I would try to yell, but only ever above water long enough to take a breath. Every time my feet touched the mud for a split second, she would push me again. I couldn't believe she was laughing. I was sure I was going to drown. No one seemed to notice. Of all people to intervene, it would happen to be my childhood bully, Zachary. He's always been a jerk to me, mentally and physically abusive, but I felt like that day he saved my life. He came up and told her to get away from me. He grabbed me by the arm and pulled me up to where I could stand again. The girl was already a ways away, too. I went on playing, and as with many other things, I don't think I told anyone until I was much older. Pretty sure I never saw that girl again. Met a creep underwater while scuba diving. Okay, so I'm about to tell the scariest thing that's ever happened to me. The thing is, I'm not an English speaker, and even though I manage, I'm not sure about the whole technical scuba diving vocabulary, but please, I'm trying my best here. It happened last year between Christmas and New Year's Eve. My family and I, 25 female, booked a few dives. They were all really good scuba divers, better than me. They passed a few scuba diving levels that allowed them to participate in more technical dives that I'm allowed to. I enjoy scuba diving as well and was able to do almost every casual dive, but I don't feel safe diving without an instructor. If anyone isn't familiar with scuba diving, here's a quick explanation. You can dive safely until a certain deep before the pressure becomes dangerous. If you dive below that point, which is roughly 20 meters to 65 feet, you have to do decompression stops during your ascent. It means you have to stop while going back to the surface at certain times to let your body adapt itself to the pressure. If you ride up too quickly, you may catch decompression sickness, which can lead in worst case scenarios to death. So we decided to manage a little private lesson with an instructor first prior to more exciting dives with my family. So the first day, my family was enjoying a dive on a technical spot that I wasn't feeling up to while I was alone with my instructor and retrieving my old scuba diving reflexes. Everything went okay. We were on a beautiful coral reef and there are many beginners and on the boat, and I was a far more experienced than they were. So finally, my instructor decided that he could manage me with another student, which is truly a beginner, and after a small briefing with every safety rule and hand sign in sight, we begin our descent. I quickly retrieved all my old reflexes and was really enjoying myself, going back and forth to the instructor and the beginner diver during at least 20 minutes. Everything was perfect besides one thing. It was a windy day, and there was a heavy swell. It's less of a problem underwater than it is for surface swimmers. The only thing was that it requires more physical effort to swim, and so my air bottle was emptying a little quicker than usual, which is normal, I guess. I signed to my instructor that I was running out of thin air, and he nodded. He was at this level far beyond from being critical. It was at this moment that I saw a young man swimming towards me. It wasn't the instructor nor its student. I'd never seen him before, but he was in full scuba diving gear, and we were the only dive boat on the spot, so I assumed he was with us, and I just didn't pay attention to him on the boat. He was swimming very fast towards me, and then signed me that he was out of air. When an air failure happens in scuba diving, there's a very strict procedure. You have to help the person, no questions asked, because every second is vital. On the gear, you have two breathing devices, regulator, octopus, I'm not sure about the English word, a main device, and a spare device. So I handed the guy my spare breathing device, which means that we were both breathing on my gear, consuming twice as air as I was consuming alone. I waited until the guy seemed to calm down and tried to hand sign him to go see my instructor. He nodded a no and signed me to start our ascent. I understand this is the procedure. The guy was very reluctant, and it was strange because I would have taken like 30 seconds to tell the instructor and he would have started an ascent with us. During this time, I was panicking as seeing my own air level going down, and I saw that our instructor was staring at us quizzically and swimming towards us. It was at this moment that the guy let go of my spare air device and started swimming away, breathing again in its own breathing device. I am totally lost and started my ascent with my instructor on that surface. Because of the tides, I was feeling dizzy and nauseous, so my bizarre encounter wasn't the first thing that I debriefed. It was after I calmed down and the boat driving us towards the beach that I asked my instructor about what happened. "Oh, I don't know. Maybe a guy lost his grip and needed some time to calm down," I replied. "Okay, but why did he tell me that he was out of air?" My instructor told me that I probably misunderstood his hand signing and that he was probably not telling me he was having an air failure because he left breathing in his own device. I'm sure I saw him do the air failure sign, but okay. The next day, I joined my family during my dive, and the instructor was different this time. I had time to think about that guy, and I was worried about him. So I told everything to my instructor, Charlie, and asked her if she knew the guy and if he was okay because I didn't see him going back to the surface. She asked me to describe him, which I did, and she told me, "Oh, that's Marvin. No, don't worry about him. He's preparing himself to become a scuba diving instructor. Every time he has a day off from the restaurant he's working in, he asked us to dive with him on the coral reef this morning and to pick him up in the afternoon. I ate at his restaurant this noon and saw him. Don't worry." I was feeling relieved and told myself it was just a comprehension issue with Marvin. The rest of the week, without any incident, I was doing more and more technical dives, and everything went very smoothly. Charlie was a wonderful instructor. Never saw Marvin again, and that being said, until the last dive. It was on New Year's Eve. We planned the best dive on that day. It was on a shipwreck, and I felt trained enough to try it without any instructor, just me and my family. It was Charlie's day off. It was fairly deep for a beginner like me, 30 meters at its down point, around 98 feet. My first day male instructor was there with us and told us that he would be exploring the shipwreck too. So we would cross him and he would help me if he saw that I needed that help. It was very comforting to know, and my family felt comforted too when I told them that. So we began our descent and started swimming across the shipwreck. We crossed our old instructor twice, but I signed him everything was okay. It was at that moment that I saw Marvin swimming towards me. At this moment, I was about 5 to 10 meters above my down point. I was a little surprised, and even more surprised when he signed me again that he was out of air. I was mistrustful, but if there was any chance that this would be true, I couldn't not help him, so I handed him my spare breather. He took it, started breathing in, and took my arm. I reached to see its air level instruments, but he prevented me from seeing it. Then he signed me to start an ascent with him. I immediately signed no. I wasn't at my deepest when he reached me, but I have been deeper during this time, and I have had decompression stop to do. I saw that my father saw us, but he quickly looked away, probably not understanding what was going on. I tapped at my diving computer to signify it to him. He shrugged, smiled at me, and started swimming up, still holding me. I was paralyzed for a few seconds, and the thing that helped me react was my diving computer was telling me to stop and decompress now. I then understood that I was in danger, that if I let him do what he wanted, I would die from the bends. I then started screaming, only to remember that no noise can be heard underwater. I started wriggling frantically as I saw my father and sisters way below me, my diving computer alerting me more and more intensely. At that moment, my father saw us and he reacted. He swam very quickly towards us, and I managed to hit the guy as my dad grabbed my ankle and suddenly dragged me deeper. The guy then quickly swam away. My dad dragged me deeper again, and then we waited for a long time. Decompression stopped to ensure that I would be okay, then started heading towards the surface very slowly and cautiously to the surface. On the surface, I started crying frantically and went back to the boat. My father then told me that he thought Marvin was my old instructor and that this is why he wasn't surprised at first. I then told it to my old instructor, who took it more seriously this time and told me to show him Marvin when he would be on the surface. Thing is, he never did. Next day on New Year's, we went a final time to the scuba diving club because my little sisters had a diploma to collect and we saw Charlie. Still shocked, I told her what happened with Marvin and then she stifled. She told me that Marvin was at the restaurant yesterday for New Year's Eve and he didn't go scuba diving, which means that the guy wasn't Marvin. And at this day, I still don't know who he is. and why do you want it? And why you tried to kill me, maybe twice? So, not Marvin. I still don't know if I'm going to scuba dive during the upcoming holidays, but if I do, I'll let you alone with your air failure. You can look inside another world. Bathing Beauty Observer. I was 17 years old and growing up in the Bay Area. Took a scuba diving class through the rec department. After the teaching lectures, there were practical skills we had to certify on. Taking off the face mask underwater and putting it back on, using the air tank to clear it, getting the regulator yanked away, etc. Since we didn't have a public pool deep enough to practice in, we had to go to a dive shop in San Jose where they had a pool. It was a nice pool, heated indoors with big picture windows, but have a divey area right next to a XXX theater, in fact. So while I was there alone that night, one of the first things you can learn in diving is the buddy system, right? But I think I wanted to go there earlier and change into my wetsuit ahead of class. I wore my swimsuit underneath a button-up short set and was starting to peel it down when I glanced across the pool to the big storefront windows. Silhouetted there was this transient-looking guy, slack-jawed and motionless, staring in at me. My heart froze. Apparently, this freak thinks he's getting a free show. I could have hastily bunned back up and retreated to the dressing room, but I was mad enough. I didn't want to give him the thrill that he copped a peek at something he wasn't supposed to see. Ripped off the jumper the rest of the way to my swimsuit. Yeah, perv, and dived in. Stayed down there as long as I could. Came up for air when I had to. Not until I saw the swiggly forms of my friends miling in on the pool deck above did I dare surface and turn around. He was gone. Probably to the XXX theater. I had someone walk me to my car after class. Don't fall in love.